Marshall Peak Chapter 17. Battle with the demonic beast. It was now the afternoon, and Yan Kai had started to walk towards the track that would lead him back to High Heaven Pavilion. Yan Kai was only given 3 days of leave, so he had to return before tomorrow morning, otherwise there would be harsh punishment awaiting him. Yan Kai felt that he had plenty of time, and was certain that he could return before dark. After all, he was only 50 kilometers away, not a long distance. Sullivan, yeah, 50 is not a long distance when you are on foot. Let me do some math here. Asian mode activate. Average walking speed is 50, which means it will take a normal person 10 hours to walk that distance. In his heart he held great anticipation with regard to the black books per page. Thinking about the results it would bring for him made him delighted, causing his steps to contain a bounce. Halfway through his journey back, Yan Kai heard an unexpected, piercing cry not too far from his position, which was mixed with the cries from a child. When he heard this, he stopped moving and strained his ears. Soon after, his face changed, and Yan Kai swiftly ran towards the direction of the sound. And he was listening to the sound. He recognized it as the sounds of the father and son pair from the night before. And that child's crying sound was from the little boy. Those two probably had encountered some sort of trouble, or why would they make such a ruckus? Last night they had given Yan Kai some of their rations, and even if it were for their past kindness, how could he just ignore their trouble? As he ran towards them, the father's roaring became increasingly desperate, and the boy's voice grew softer and softer. Yan Kai's face gradually hardened as an ominous feeling rose from within him. By the time Yan Kai arrived, the father's roar could no longer be heard, and he only saw a dark cave in a high hill. To the side of the cave, in the midst of some bushes, tangled between some spider webs, was a silver bow. This bow, the same one the little boy had been holding the previous night. Without thinking, Yan Kai threw these possessions onto the ground, heightened his senses, and plunged straight into that dark and sinister cave. Although the light inside the cave was not bright, it was still enough to see. When he looked around, Yan Kai was shocked to discover that the cave was covered in webs. On the walls and the ground, they crisscrossed each other and varied in thicknesses. Layer upon layer, the road ahead was blocked by the multitude of webs. Not only that, the cave was damp. The water dripped down at a steady pace, and when Yan Kai took a step forward, his foot sank into the ground. Steeling his nerves, Yan Kai walked to the sound of deep breathing. Only he saw a large human-sized cocoon spun from a spider's thread in a chrysalis-like state. At the top, it revealed a human face, which belonged to the burly man from the night before. Worriedly, Yan Kai dashed over to the tracked hunter, his worry eased upon discovering that he was only unconscious. Hearing Yan Kai calling to him, the hunter groggily awoke and called out feebly, "Save the child!" He was dragged further inside. "I beg of you, please save my child!" Got dragged inside. This shocked Yan Kai as he struggled to free the hunter from the web. Sadly, the web was too strong for his current strength. Being unable to break it, he could only temporarily give up. Diving into the hole, he chased after the little boy. From behind, the hunter warned, "Be careful, that is a demonic spider beast." When he heard the words, demonic spider beast, Yan Kai's heart thumped loudly. These demonic beasts were not like ordinary wild animals. They loved to slaughter. They were true ferocious beasts, and Yan Kai was not a match for even the lowest among them with his current strength. In the Black Wind Mountains, the reason why the first 30 miles were deemed a safe zone was precisely because there were no ferocious beasts. Unfortunately, it seemed one had appeared here. This was completely out of anyone's expectations. Now that he knew it was a ferocious beast, Yan Kai movements became more cautious and faint. Slowly he groped his way through the tunnel, and after about 10 feet, he spotted the little boy. The son was in a similar situation to his father, wrapped up in a cocoon which was suspended in mid-air by a larger spider web. At the side of the little boy there was an enormously large flower-patterned spider sucking on a straw. The straw was inserted in the little boy's arm, and you could clearly see the dark red blood streaming out from the straw and into the spider's mouth. Sylvain, interesting how a spider could create a straw on the ground of this hillside cave, were various bones of all different types of beasts piled up like mountains. One could only imagine the amount of time the demonic spider beast had spent living here, and the number of poor souls, humans and animals alike, that had fallen prey to it. Yan Kai had no time to spare to think about this spider's capabilities and form an appropriate plan. Every second he delayed increased the chances of this little boy ascending straight to heaven. After a moment's silence, he suddenly charged forward. The enormously large, flower-patterned spider did not expect to be disturbed at that moment. Shortly after Yan Kai charged forward, a large amount of force was applied to the side of the demonic spider, and a large hole was torn in the web. The flower-patterned spider fell alongside Yan Kai. The little boy also fell through the hole and onto the ground. Being attacked so abruptly caused the flower-patterned spider to turn furious. Its 8 long, hairy legs stamped the ground, and all of its eyes focused on Yan Kai. Before he even had time to get up, he was pinned down by a single pounce from the flower-patterned spider. Yan Kai snarled, a steel fist flew out and landed squarely on the throat of the spider. This momentarily stunned it. Yan Kai took the opportunity to kick the spider, sending it flying away. With a single roll, Yan Kai got to his feet and crouched down, his eyes fully focused on the movements of that flower-patterned spider. After that small confrontation, Yan Kai's curiously beating heart had calmed slightly, for that demonic beast's rank was not that high, otherwise he would even be able to struggle against it. It's most likely just only a first-realm demonic beast. However, even if it was only a first-realm demonic beast, given Yan Kai's current strength, it was still a difficult opponent. As both sides were sizing up their opponents, the flower-patterned spider started to show signs of impatience, and it wasn't just him. Yan Kai began to exhibit them as well. It seemed that the little boy had lost too much blood, and was showing signs of poisoning. If the current situation could not be resolved quickly, then there would be no time to save him. Suddenly, the flower-patterned spider opened its mouth to spit out a long, gem silk thread. It spat the thread towards Yan Kai, signaling the start of its attack. Previously, Yan Kai had learnt about this thread's durability, so naturally he was wary to not be trapped by it. At once, he rolled to the side and narrowly dodged the attack. The spider didn't show much reaction to his dodge and continued to spit out other thread pieces. By the time Yan Kai noticed the spider wasn't aiming at him, it was already too late. The entire cave had been covered by a web of these threads, sealing off his exits and trapping him inside. Yan Kai laughed at that thought. Any fear he had previously harbored was quickly expelled by the arrogance seeking out from his bones, pumping adrenaline through his body. With the current situation, if he didn't kill the spider, he would not be able to leave. Since it had come to that, he could only fight to the bitter end. Either you die or I die. With time ticking, Yan Kai could not afford to delay. Firmly planting both feet on the ground, he sprinted towards the flower-patterned spider. Out flew another strand of thread. Fortunately, Yan Kai was on guard, so how could he not avoid it? After dodging 3 of these threads in succession, he had finally closed the distance between them. But before he could throw out a punch, that flower-patterned spider raised its front 2 legs and drove them towards him. Yan Kai could only lift up his arm to block. The spider's forelimbs pierced through his arm. Yan Kai roared out in pain. His blood boiled out. Not only was he not in a fearful panic, Instead, he had an indescribable feeling of excitement and anticipation in his heart. All of his bones clanking together caused a warm feeling pass through his entire body. Marshall Pig Chapter 18. Good men will be rewarded. Throwing out a punch, Yan K's fist whistled through the air and smashed into the eyes on the left-hand side of the flower-patterned spider's head. The moment his fist hit, it pulverized 2 eyes. The flower-patterned spider was horrified. Even with its limited intellectual capacity, it knew to fear that human who now had blood dripping from his arm. When it went to retract its 2 legs that were lodged into Yan K's arms, the spider found that the arm muscles had tightened around its forelimbs, causing the spider to be unable to pull them out. Yan K's second punch followed shortly after his first, pulverizing another 2 eyes. The flower-patterned spider screeched out in pain, incessantly trying to retreat, but its hind legs could only scratch the ground. In desperation, it lashed out at Yan Kai, leaving many shallow wounds on his arms. Although they weren't deep, they still drew blood. But the pain only served to increase Yan K's adrenaline. His whole body bubbled with overflowing strength. The corners of his mouth curved into a cold and merciless smile as his fists flew endlessly towards the spider's forehead. Under the unceasing brush of attacks, the flower-patterned spider's forehead cracked open, and its bodily fluids fizzed out. A dismal whimper escaped from its mouth. The flower-patterned spider did not wish to sit and wait for its death. From its mouth it spat out strings of its web, and at such close proximity, the web wrapped Yan Kai up. However, at that moment, the flower-patterned spider was in a horrible state. Its head was disfigured so much that it had nearly burst. If it wasn't a demonic beast, and had the tenacious vitality that is associated with it, it would have already died many times over. Since this was the case, even though it had trapped him with its web under Yan K's relentless fists, it soon ceased all signs of struggling. Yan Kai would have never imagined he could win a fight with a demonic beast. Furthermore, not only had he survived, he had also killed it. Even though it was a first-realm demonic beast, it was still not something a cultivator at the Tempered Body 5th stage should be able to defeat. Although Yan K's wounds weren't considered light, he didn't feel much pain from them, as if they nothing at all. After certifying that the flower-patterned spider was truly dead, Yan Kai went to extract the leg that had pierced into his arm. When he pulled it out, a gush of warm blood followed. Urza, oh, you just casually pulled something that was stabbed into your arm. Oh, it's stuck. Let's pull it out. Without even pausing to inspect his injuries, Yan Kai tore apart the spider web that was binding him and rushed to the little boy's side. Gently cradling his body, he brought him out of the cave. The little boy's father had managed to finally escape from his web cocoon, and just as he was preparing to run further into the cave, he saw blood-drenched Yan Kai carry out his son. He quickly inquired, "What happened to him?" "He has lost too much blood and has also been poisoned," Yan Kai replied. After reaching the cave's entrance, Yan Kai placed the little boy onto the ground and raced towards his fallen bag. Taking out some of the herbs inside, he began chewing on them. Without hesitation, he called over the hunter, "Chew on these herbs to soften them, and then feed them to him." The hunter was already scared out of his wits, so when he heard Yan K's orders, he didn't hesitate. Swiftly, he placed the herbs into his mouth and began to chew them diligently. In that moment, Yan K's mind was all too clear. His understanding of each herb's medicinal properties began to appear in his mind within his mind. Which herbs could detoxify, which herbs could help with healing, and which herbs could help staunch blood flow. The knowledge flowing through his mind was comparable to that of a veteran pharmacist. After a short period of time, Yan Kai took out the herbs he had been chewing on and smeared them over the little boy's arm. The hunter followed his actions and began to feed the chewed-up herbs to his son. Under the nervous gazes of the two people, Color gradually returned to the boy's pale face and his breathing steady. The hunter could finally release the tension in his heart and fell on his buttocks. Crying out loudly, he said, "Thank God nothing happened! Thank God nothing happened!" Yan Kai poured cold water on his newfound hope. "Not yet. Myards are only low-leveled ones and can only alleviate his symptoms. You have to leave the mountain and find a doctor. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the poison will become incurable." The hunter could only listen to Yan Kai's advice. "Immediately," he said, "then I shall go take him to find a doctor now." "There's no hurry," said Yan Kai as he held out his hand to stop him. "Allow your son's condition to stabilize first before moving him, yes." With such a great catastrophe befuddling on the hunter, he had long since lost his nerve. So whatever Yan Kai said, he would follow. After replying, he remembered that his savior was also injured. His injuries were not light, so he worriedly asked, "Savior, do you not want to also treat your own wounds?" Yan Kai replied, "No need. But you have shed such a large amount of blood. How is that all right?" The hunter looked at him in shock. Standing up, Yan Kai jumped up and down vivaciously. "Even I don't know." He not only felt great, but also excited. Yan Kai suspected all this was somehow related to his golden skeleton, but how could he explain it to a simple hunter? As he thought back to the recent fight, Yan Kai's blood began to boil once again. That was the very first time he had ever been in a life or death situation. But he had not experienced even the slightest amount of fear. Instead, he had only felt enjoyment at the feeling of blood splattering all around him, as though it was the most common occurrence. Mirza, the birth of an bloodthirsty Demindamin king. Silovin, his sex life will be rather wild, that's right. Please wait a bit and I will return soon. As he picked up his bag, Yan Kai once again rushed into the cave. The hunter thought he had gone to sort out the demonic beast's corpse, but that was not it. Although the flower-patterned spider was a demonic beast, its corpse didn't hold any value. It was too low level. Yan Kai's goal was to pick up herbs growing inside the cave. Before he had begun his battle with the flower-patterned spider, he had discovered a large amount of purple-colored flowers. Previously, he didn't have the time to examine them, but now, once he got back to them, his spirits couldn't help but rise. If he didn't see incorrectly, those purple-colored flowers were actually the three-leafed chaos spirit flowers that he desperately needed. Here comes his Xianzia luck. Three-leafed chaos spirit flowers grew in dark and damp places with a lot of corpses, making this cave an ideal environment for them to grow in. With his heart full of anticipation as he entered the cave, Yan Kai was so joyous that he nearly laughed. Helping others will really reward you well. It seemed that this saying must be true. If he had not come to rescue the father and son pair, then he would never have found the words that he was looking for. The vast expanse of purple flowers in front of him truly were the three-leaved chaos spirit flowers. Plus, there appeared to be a vast quantity of them. A quick count showed there were at least 30 to 40 of these flowers. These small purple flowers, all bunched together, would make anyone who saw them feel delighted. Without further ado, Yan Kai hurriedly took out his shovel and started to harvest these herbs. While he busied himself, Yan Kai's heart was more than contented. Just as he was preparing to leave the cave, Yan Kai discovered a red, mushroom-like plant in the corner of the cave. His curiosity piqued, Yan Kai walked towards it to carefully examine it. This thing was about the size of a bowl, dark red, and was like a mushroom or fungus. Yan Kai didn't recognize this bin, for it was not mentioned in the little book that Treasure Man had given him. Could it be a priceless treasure? Rolling up his sleeves, Yan Kai went to pick the mushroom-like plant. As for the matter of its identity, he could work it later. It didn't take much space up in his bag anyway. By the time Yan Kai exited the cave, his bag was filled to the brim. "Let's go," Yan Kai told the hunter, treating him like an equal. The hunter was moved to tears, for he knew that Yan Kai was worried they would encounter more danger on the journey out. That's why he was following them. "We just happened to be traveling the same path," Yan Kai replied humbly, and the three of them quickly descended the mountain. By evening they had already arrived back into town, and in the dark they searched for the doctor's home.